Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm so delighted. I think it was actually 2016 that my friend Stephanie Davis brought me to my first Creative Mornings meeting. And yeah, that's a long time ago. Lots of meetings, lots of changes. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Change your perspective, change your life. And I'm so happy for the marriage of finally the meeting of the Creative Arts Center and Creative Mornings, because two very important communities in my life, and to finally have them come together is just wonderful. So I'm a creativity coach and the founder of Creative Oasis Coaching. So what does a creativity coach do? Well, basically I help people to get the dreams and ideas, creative ideas in their brains out into the world, and I help them do that by helping them to build their confidence and shift their mindset. And that could look like starting a business, growing a business, getting a passion project off the ground, focusing, getting clarity around what you want to do, and then focusing and following through with that. So I'm going to invite you all just to close your eyes for a moment and think about something in your life. It could be your career or your personal life or your creative space where you would like to create a change. And as you're thinking about this change, and you're thinking about what it would take to create this change, what that would look like to create this change, just notice the images that come into your mind. Notice the words and the phrases that come into your mind. And I think you should all have a little notebook that Nikki was so kind to donate, and a little pencil. And if you don't, you can write it in your phone if you want to play along like this, because I'm going to make this talk a little bit interactive. But I just want you to note, open your eyes, and I invite you to write down 2 or 3 things that came into your mind as you were thinking about what it would take to create change. And if you don't have the notebook and you want to play along, Nikki has, there's a whole box back there. The other thing I didn't mention is that I also want to broaden the definition of what it means to be a creative in the world, because so many of us think that means I can draw or play an instrument, and actually you got dressed this morning. You've made a meal before. We use our creative mind all the time, and I think when we start looking at the world through the lens and the perspective of everything's an opportunity to be creative, it just changes everything and makes it so much more exciting and fun. So I want to ask you, these things that you came up with, do they look like a to-do list? Are they action-oriented? Are they things like, I don't know, get more clients, post more on social media, make more art, journal more? Does anything like this, are they kind of action-oriented show of hands for people that had more action-oriented kind of things? Yeah. See, you're in good company, you're not alone, and here's why. Because in general, when we want to make a change in our life, that's what our default is. We focus on what are the actions that I need to take to make this happen. And what I'm here to offer you today is that there's a more important place to begin. As Oprah Winfrey says, the greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change their future by changing their attitude. And our attitudes are formed by our thoughts and our beliefs that inform our perspective on life. That is always within our control to change. And for me personally, a person who's a list maker, an action taker, had filled millions of journals with creative ideas and morning pages over the years, it was truly once I learned that the to-do list on its own, the actions on its own, were not the thing that was going to help me to create what I wanted to create. But it was really my perspective, my thoughts and beliefs about what was possible. I'm doing my best to, never done one of these kind before, so here we go, new perspective. So, 2007, I hired a creativity coach, and the reason that I did that is I'm a multi-passionate creative. I felt like I had a million creative ideas calling to me, and I felt like they were all whirling around my head, and I was in the eye of the storm. Can anybody relate to that? Yeah, so as a multi-passionate creative, I hired her to help to get some clarity on where I wanted to focus, and then to help me focus and follow through. And pretty quickly, I realized that music, out of all the things that I was potentially wanting to do, I was working on a pilot for a TV show, I was writing a fictionalized memoir, I was singing some jingles. I mean, y'all, I was doing all the things. And she helped me to decide that music was where I wanted to focus. And it was interesting because on one of our first coaching calls, I remember she said to me, "So Jill, you're a singer-songwriter?" And I said, "Oh, no, not a singer-songwriter. She said, oh, and like she was reading the little form that I filled out before I started working with her, and she goes, well, it says here that you sing. And I'm like, well, yeah, I sing. And she's like, and it says here that you've written songs and you play piano and guitar. And I'm like, yep. Okay, what's up with that? That was the first moment that I realized it was my perspective. It was my thoughts and beliefs about what it took to legitimately call myself a singer-songwriter. And I had thoughts like, I don't perform. I don't have a CD. My music isn't on the radio. So I felt like an imposter by saying I'm a singer-songwriter. So that was an amazing aha moment, and I could see how my perspective was holding me back. So she helped me. The second thing was, I thought it was going to take a lot of time. I was like, I don't know if I had a young daughter at the time. I'm like, I don't know if I have time to do what I want to do to make this happen. And she offered the different perspective that, hey, just sit at the piano, play and sing for 2 or 3 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week to begin. Let it be that small and that simple, which seemed absurd at the time. Here's what happened. In those 2 or 3 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week, I fell back in love with making music. I remembered why I wanted to do it again. I was like, why the heck are you walking past this piano that you have in your house every day and not sitting down and playing? So I started playing for myself, and then I remembered, oh my God, I love performing. I want to perform again. So I put together a set called Cover Girl, and I started doing covers of my favorite female singer-songwriters around town at places like Port David's Pub and Club Dada. I attended a songwriting workshop with Lloyd Maines and Terry Hendricks, who are like Texas greats, and started thinking of myself as a songwriter again. And then I got really audacious because my confidence was growing. I was actually making this happen. And I decided to go into the recording studio and do a solo CD, which had always been a dream of mine, but again, little imposter syndrome. So I actually made this happen. Now, because I was experiencing so much joy and success in my music, and this is the CD that I ended up recording, Dancing in Limbo, by the time it was time for this CD to come out and I got to do a CD release, I had also decided that I wanted to become a creativity coach because I was experiencing so much success in my own creative realm that I wanted to share this that I was learning with other people. I wanted to give this experience to other people. And so when it came time to do my CD release, I thought, well, now I'm a creativity coach. I can do something, I want to do something more creative than just going to a smoky bar. We used to have smoky bars back then. And it was 14 years ago this month. Going to smoky bars and hawk CDs. So what I did was I invited 13 female artists to each make and contribute a piece of artwork inspired by one of the 13 songs on my CD, which they did. I enlisted sponsors, I enlisted volunteers, we made video interviews with each of the artists to put up on the website. We had a beautiful raffle gift that was like worth $1,500, and we sold tickets for this event, which eventually I hosted, that was called Infinite Possibility, the name of the first song that I wrote after I started working with my creativity coach, a night of music, art, and women helping women. And in addition to being a CD release where we had the silent art auction, I played with a band the whole entire CD. We had the raffle tickets, and it was a heck of a party. But in addition to that, we ended up raising over $10,000 for Women International after expenses. Thank you, and let me tell you why I like to share that story. 3 things. One is that I feel like it was kind of like my thesis for creativity coaching, in a way. If that was a graduate school, that was my thesis. The first thing is, it's a good perspective change, and I don't have to do it alone. Because I think as creatives, so often, Steph touched on this, we feel like I should be able to do this on my own. We're either afraid to ask for help, or there's just like some shame around it, or just a perspective that we haven't thought about. Do I really need to do this on my own? So I reached out to help, first from my creativity coach, and then from other people in the community. That's the first change. The second one is, the other thing that we tend to do with our creative dreams is we want proof. We want to know it's going to succeed. We want to know where it's going to go. And if we don't know those things, we're often just going to stay in the dream phase. We're not going to take the actions that we need to make it happen. I didn't know it was, when I sat down at the piano 2 minutes to start playing around, I had no idea I was even going to do a CD, much less this. So when we'll trust that the creative calling in our heart is leading somewhere where it's supposed to lead us, there's no telling where it can lead us. And then the third thing I think is pretty funny and interesting is the three things that didn't allow me to even call myself a singer-songwriter in the privacy of a coaching session, that I wasn't playing around town and I didn't have a CD and my music wasn't played on the radio, all changed after I started. And so I ended up playing in places that I'm surprised I didn't think I would get to. The Kessler when it first opened, the House of Blues, Lakewood Theater. So again, I just want you to think about go back to that place in your mind, that change that you said that you wanted to make, and think, can you put your finger on a thought or a belief or a perspective that's keeping you in the stuck place you are right now? And then just to start, just one that can help you start moving in the other direction. So again, as I said, because of the success that I had, the success and joy in all the ways that I had experienced with music and with the CD release event, I really became convicted. I really wanted to help more people with coaching. And so my focus kind of shifted away from music. I still played around town and stuff, but I really started spending more time thinking about and focusing on Creative Oasis coaching. And over the next 6 years, I built it into a lovely, flexible, part-time business. And my daughter was young, and so it was perfect because I was able to hang out with her a lot, and that was good. The other thing that happened over the next 6 years was that my really unhealthy, toxic marriage kind of, in shorthand, came to an end. And so it was I was grateful and thankful when the divorce finally happened, but it left me at another crossroads, another decision to make. I had been out of the full-time workforce for over 15 years, had my part-time coaching gig. I was getting no income at all, no help from anybody else. And because of the nature of said divorce, I ended up having a lot of legal issues and I had to file bankruptcy. So not only was I starting from really scratch alone, I was like, oh dang. You hear people say sometimes like they've had an illness or they've had a tragedy, or they had something in their life that you wouldn't wish on somebody, and then you're like, oh, but I'm so glad that happened. I mean, I got pushed out of the nest. Oh my God, I could fly. I didn't know. So my perspective changes were, the perspective and the thoughts and beliefs that were keeping me stuck were, it's too late. It's too late for this. I don't know how to do it. I should have left earlier. I shouldn't have to ask for help. I should already have this figured out. Lots of thoughts and beliefs and perspectives that led to shame and doubt and worry and fear. Very human. I have compassion with myself for the fact that I had those. But what I did took a little courage and bravery. I asked for a loan, and it was a loan from my dad because I had nothing. And I invested the majority of that loan into the things that I needed to build my business. Coaching, Zoom, things like that. And I went all in with it. And what I learned was to shift my mindset to what I did have within my control and to think about, I'm always going to have my own back. Even though I don't know exactly how to do it, I'm committed to do it. Then I even had shifts like, you know what? Business professionals get help. Business professionals get loans. Business professionals even carry debt sometime. I started looking for ways to remove the shame and just think about myself like a business person. And so over the last 6 years, that's exactly what I did. And I love this quote by Julia Cameron, which is, safety is an expensive illusion. It's the thing that makes us stay where we are because it's just what we're most used to. And so for me, moving out of that safety, and it was definitely doing that, but it allowed me to do things I could have never imagined. So I started teaching in person first, and then I had blessedly moved all of my coaching, most of my coaching except for the workshops that I teach here a few times a year, to Zoom in August of 2019. So when 2020 came and everybody was on Zoom, I was like, I got this. Yeah. And I was able to stay in the house with my daughter, which was amazing. So again, thinking about your career, thinking about your life, just take an honest look at what are some thoughts and beliefs or perspectives that are keeping me in a situation that I might not want to be in, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a career, and then what's a shift that I can make to a new thought and belief pattern, a new perspective that will help me move in the direction that I want to go. Now this last shift in perspective, I want to just say right off the bat that I'm sharing this from my perspective as a privileged white middle-class woman. So in 2020, when the Black Lives Matter and the anti-racism movement became stronger and louder by necessity and by the horrible deaths of Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and so many other people, I had a change in perspective that was major, like thankfully a lot of people did, which was the change in perspective from we're in a post-racism society to, oh no, absolutely not. It is pervasive, it's systemic, it's widespread. You don't even know, Jill. You don't even know. And so I learned about things I had never been taught in school. The Tulsa Massacre, Rosewood Massacre. Just last month, here at our Creative Mornings meeting, not here, but the one that we had, Dora Brought-Plenty was our speaker. And she talked about Indian boarding schools and the trauma that she experienced at the hand of my government, of our government. Big perspective change. And so, you know, what would I do? I looked for ways to educate myself. I looked for ways to learn, because things I hadn't been taught. I want to give a shout out to some local organizations that are amazing. Change the Perception, which changed their name to Visions for Change recently, and then Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. Highly recommend you check out these organizations that have so much good information and programming still that's happening. Now, was it overwhelming? Yeah, because it's a huge systemic problem. What could I, one person who's not in a position of any real power, what can I really do to affect any change? But I love that story about a child that's walking along the beach, and all of these starfish have washed up and they're dying in the sun, and one by one this child is tossing them back into the sea so that they can live. And this adult, let's call it an adult, walks by and says, "You're never going to save them all. Why bother? What difference does it make?" And this child, in their wisdom, says, "Well, it makes a difference to this one." And he tosses it back into the ocean. And what that child's choice shows us is the power of perspective, is the power of focusing on what is within your control versus being overwhelmed by everything that's out of your control, so taking no action at all and freezing. Which is a very human, I want to have compassion for that. It's a very human thing, but when you see it, when you see that that's what we're doing, we have a choice to do something different. So what was my choice? My choice was, I chose 3 simple commitments. The first was to continue to educate myself. The second was to stop centering whiteness. And the third was to shine a light on, support, and amplify BIPOC creatives whenever possible. 3 things, 100% within my purview that I could do. Now, heenie-sheenie, that's my made-up word for a serendipitous occasion, was that at that time I was volunteering for heenie-sheenie. Start using it. I was volunteering for the Blue Plate Special, which is a fundraiser here at the Creative Arts Center. And I saw an opportunity to diversify and invite some new folks to join in that experience who had not been previously invited. So I went out into the Dallas art community with a lot of intention, and I met BIPOC artists, BIPOC curators and gallerists, and I invited some people to join. Lots of people did. And I, again, talk about making a choice that you had no idea where it was going to lead, because I made it one simple choice to do that. And then over the last 3 years, my life has changed in beautiful, colorful, exciting, and educating ways. I have met more people that I would have never known. I have friends, good friends that are here, that I had never known before, and people ask me like, well, you know, what can I do? I can't afford to buy all the art, you know what, I can't either. I wish I could. I wish I could buy everybody's art and go buy the whole collection out. Y'all, there's so many things we can do. Go out, go visit galleries, do buy the art if you can, but then, you know, like and share, get to know about people, boutique owners, chefs, whatever it is, right? There's so many opportunities to lend support. And the thing I'll say about that is to do it non-transactionally. Don't expect anything back. Don't even expect a thank you back. That's not the point, right? It's a beautiful bonus byproduct that I have amazing friendships from this. It's not the point. So, again, I ask you to think about something in society that you would love to see change and you feel overwhelmed by it. It could be environmentalism. It could be politics. It could be, so many different things. But rather than being frozen and thinking it's too overwhelming, just ask yourself, what's a thought or perspective that's keeping me stuck in this place? And then what's one that I can have now that I can change and start moving in another direction? I want to offer 3 tips or things that I hope would help as you're creating change and changing your perspective in your life. And the first one is to remember that mistakes are part of the process. We're so wrapped up and so afraid that we're going to make a mistake that we don't do anything sometimes. Marva Collins, who is an educator, says, if you can't make a mistake, you can't make anything. Yeah, it's so true, and yet it's such a V8 moment, and yet we'll keep it. The fear of making a mistake will keep us from reaching out, from trying things. So just remember, it's part of the process. I always tell my clients, I'm like, nothing has gone wrong if you learn from it. The second one is, again, go back to the perspective of what's in your control. Maya Angelou says, if you don't like something, change it, and if you can't change it, change your attitude. Your attitude, remember, is your thoughts and your beliefs, and that's your perspective on life. So when we bring that back to what's available to us, it just becomes so much more doable to create that change. And then lastly, you have to look at it head on. And this is what we are loath to do when, especially if it's a big change. And so it goes back to that idea of we stay with what's known. Even if it's horrible, we stay in situations that are known because they're familiar. And there's comfort in familiarity, even if it's not a place that we want to be. So that's why we stay in toxic relationships too long. That's why we stay in work situations longer than we should. That's why we don't make societal changes as quickly as we should. It's kind of the devil It's like, this is what I know, I don't know any different. So James Baldwin says, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. So I want to add to that facing it head on, awareness is the first thing before change, but do it with compassion and grace. Compassion and grace for yourself because you're trying, and compassion and grace for anybody that has anything to do with the change that you're trying to create. The thing that I like to remember, and I think is super empowering to remember, is that every single moment in our lives is an opportunity to stay the same or create change. It's like choose your own adventure. I mean, we really can choose which, are we going to go this way, or are we going to go that way? And I would suggest checking in with yourself, checking in with your heart. I know, I can't speak for everybody on the planet, but I'm pretty damn sure that everybody in this room and watching this video are cool, heart-centered people. So if you just take a moment to check in with yourself and be like, why am I doing this? What are my reasons? What's my why? And you don't feel icky about it, then go for it. So changing our perspectives, it's totally 100% possible. Is it challenging? Yes, absolutely, because of inertia, because what we were just talking about before, because the thoughts that we've been thinking the longest they're strong. They're the thoughts that we have by default the most. I liken it to learning a new language, right? Like it takes a while you can learn a couple words of a language, that's one thing. Then you can maybe order something at a restaurant, that's another. But to sit down and have a conversation that you understand bilingually with somebody else, that really takes some time, right? And immersion. Another analogy that I love to share is that imagine, if you will, that you lived in a beautiful little cabin in the woods, and across the flowery meadow from you, your best friend lived in their little cabin in the woods. And you had this nice little path that you had worn back and forth to each other's delightful cabins. Mine looks like a hobbit house because you went to visit each other all the time. But then your friend decides to build a cabin about half a mile up by a waterfall. Doesn't mean you're going to stop visiting your friend, but it means she's in a new place that you want to go to, so you're going to have to clear a path. You're going to have to move stumps. You're going to have to move rocks. You're going to have to walk that path many times before it becomes a path that you can see easily. You might even accidentally go to her old cabin sometimes because you're like, oh, I forgot. That's where I used to go all the time. But absolutely, you will be able to get there eventually when you get clear on where you want to go, and you keep practicing walking that path. It's the same thing with our thoughts and beliefs. It's the same thing with our perspective. So Maya Angelou says that people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I hope that this talk made you feel empowered. I hope it made you feel that you really can change your perspective in so many different ways, and you can start really small, and the impact, the ripple effect could take you to places you can't even imagine right now, which is pretty exciting. And I'll leave you with my philosophy, which is this: when you say yes to your creative callings, you become a happier, healthier, more fulfilled human, and the world becomes a better, brighter place.